Hi, I'm Tracey Soltis.
And I'm Kali Alfaro. And you're listening to the Mind Body Studio, a place for anyone who wants to reach their full potential, thrive, and create a life filled with vitality.
Each week, we'll bring you our expertise, giggles, and a splash of quirky to explore real and relevant topics to help you along your life's journey.
We'll bring you science, psychology, and practicality to real life issues.
So, thanks for listening. We know you're going to love it. All right, welcome everyone to our special Q&A segment. This is our very short segment where we answer some of your questions. So thank you so much for sending them in. We love it.
We love them. Welcome everyone. Kalí here. So our question today was, how do I say no?
I know that's a really tricky one, and it's one that people struggle with. Probably one of the biggest things I get asked is that people come into my office, they're overwhelmed, they're way overcommitted, they don't know how to say no to people.
So for our listeners out there, we are talking about this in the context of boundaries, right? So purely in how do I say no to more work? How do I say no to a social catch-up? How do I say no to taking on more responsibilities? That kind of stuff. So that is the context in which we are going to talk about today.
And I think when we're having a big look at that, we have to look at all of the things that we have on our plate. So I'm just going to talk about overcommitting to, say, friendships, because I think that that's a really big one. Because sometimes we can get a little bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, for those who don't know what FOMO means. And we don't want to miss out on these really special events or these catch-ups with people. But at the same time, it does come at the expense of our energy levels. And sometimes we simply just don't have enough to give to others. So what I suggest to my clients is that when they're going through those particular situations, it's, and it's obviously a very important relationship to them, and they don't want that relationship to kind of fizzle out. It is, something that they want to nurture. It's important to explain to people what's going on for you and being open and honest, but also setting an end point for that as well, so that they know this is what I'm going through. This is the time it's going to take for me to kind of get through that. But there's an end point, and this is the end point when I would be able to commit to seeing you. So it's not that you're not replying to them, you're not, because it's, sometimes it is a lot of effort to actually get back to people. It's not that you're pushing them away. It's that you're being open and honest and giving them some form of communication so that they know when that time is going to be up and they can expect to be able to see you again, and so that they can have some of your time, because hopefully you will have the energy to give to them. What are your thoughts on that?
I think a lot of people struggle from people pleasing, right? So they think that by saying yes to everything, they're going to please everyone, and then they find themselves in this little pickle, right? Where they're overcommitted, they're a little bit stressed, or they are overpromising and under-delivering.
Yeah, and we don't want to do that, because we want good quality, wholesome relationships and situations. We don't want to have others feel as though they could be an afterthought as well, that we haven't put the energy in, that we haven't put the thought and attention and the priority into those relationships as well. I think it's important I would much prefer if someone said to me, look, I'm really sorry, I'm just so flat out right now. I don't have time to catch up or to commit to this at the moment, but this relationship is really important and I promise I'm going to get back to you at this point. Then someone coming to me and just going, oh yeah, I can catch up with you, but then not being present when you're catching up. Because there's nothing worse than sitting across from someone and you've put aside this time.
You've got to answer emails and phone calls, and it's like, what's the point? I'm in front of an answering machine.
They're not giving you that space to actually have that time with you. They're actually so distracted because they're so overwhelmed and caught up with all of the other things that they're doing they're just not able to center themselves. And so I would much prefer to go, okay, let's just put this on hold for a second and let's wait until you've got some real authentic, honest, quality time, and then we'll pick it up then.
So I would encourage people to undercommit and over-deliver, right? Mm-hmm. So think about if you are overcommitting and under-delivering, that's not cool. That's not nice. You don't want to do that. So switch it around, right? Yeah. I want to give some really practical tips. So sometimes people find it difficult to say no. Some alternatives are, it's not the right time for me right now, but I'll get back to you. And honor your word. Be genuine. If you are going to say, I'm going to get back to you next week, if you have a bit of a forgetful memory, make a note, put a reminder in your phone. Like be really genuine in honoring your word. The other thing that I would suggest people say, if they can't make something, but someone has, invited them to several things, or someone has asked them to do something several times, that you look at your diary and make sure that there is a time that you absolutely know that you can make it, and you say to them, I can't make it on that day, I would love to, but I know that I'm absolutely available on this date, so that you don't leave things hanging. Humans really struggle with uncertainty, so we want to make sure that we're being clear and that we are always really nourishing and respecting. You respect your time and you respect other people's times. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, because we want to be able to be present with people. We don't want to be distracted. I mean, that's a really big thing for me, is that because I am introverted, and I find that I love to I need to go to quiet spaces sometimes, that I don't tend to have a lot of flexibility in my diary sometimes to give to others, because I'm busy kind of putting a bit of self-love back into my own little bucket. And so the time that I do give to people, it does take a lot out of me. And so I need to make sure that time that I'm giving to them is good quality time that I can afford to expend, give that to them at the time. But then I'm also making sure that after that conversation, or after that catch up or commitment or whatever is happening, that I'm then looking after myself afterwards as well, and having some quiet and some downtime to kind of fill my little bucket back up again.
And sometimes catch-ups don't have to be that intense. You can just say, hey, you know what, let's grab a cup of coffee and go watch a sunset, and you can both sit together in silence.
Yeah.
Right? So sometimes I think we put too much pressure to be everything for everyone all the time, and, we end up burning out, and that's not good either. So there is such beauty in silence, and there is such beauty in just being able to share a space together.
Yeah, simplicity, right?
Absolutely.
So just keeping it simple, getting back to basics. If it's in a relationship that needs a bit of nurturing and a bit of love, sometimes it is just a case of doing something where you're just together. And you don't have to think too much about what you're actually doing and how you're going to do it and for how long you're going to do it. It's just, let's just catch up. Let's just enjoy the basic, simple things of life and just have a nice, beautiful conversation, or sit in silence.
Or sometimes if you're time poor, I also find that we're talking specifically about friendships here. If you're time poor but you exercise, or you go for your morning coffee, or you go for your meditation, maybe put those things together and say, hey, you know what, I really don't have time, but do you want to join me on my morning walk? Or should we catch up and do a meditation together, because I know that, I can't leave the house without it. Or, hey, why don't we choose the same meditation and we'll have a quick conversation on the phone, we'll put it on, and then we check in and see how it went. You get creative.
Yeah.
So that you find different ways of feeling connected that doesn't entirely impose on your structure or your own responsibilities. How would we, Tracey, say no to work responsibilities that are being imposed upon us?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think that we have to have a look at the structure of our work too and what we can actually commit to. Because again, in a similar way to relationships, we want to be delivering the best quality work that we can. We want to be showing up in our workplace and making sure that we're delivering to a really good quality degree. So I would be questioning the reasoning and the consequences of that and seeing if it is actually something that is manageable. I know that sometimes what happens in certain work situations is that another colleague potentially leaves and they end up, getting that whole pile of work on there. So I think it's about being realistic about what your expectations are, what your employer's expectations are, and making sure that you're not over, as you said before, taking on too much and over promising and not being able to deliver on those promises, because that has a knock-on effect. There's a lot of consequences, especially if you're delivering a service or there's a duty of care there, but depending on what line of work you're actually in, there's potentially a knock-on effect that will happen if you take on too much work. And your work-life balance is going to suffer from that too. If you don't have enough time in your day to do all of these things for your work, you're going to be worrying about it at night. You're going to be leaving work stressed. You're going to be having terrible sleep. So if it's something that's manageable and doable for you, that's totally fine. But we have to really assess whether we're overpromising.
And this touches on some of the topics that we've discussed in other podcasts, where I want you to be aware that every action you are reinforcing a dynamic. So if someone says to you, can you do this? And you always say yes. And then you wonder, why do I always get this work? Why is my inbox so full? Why am I given so many responsibilities? Sometimes you need to figure out, what am I doing that is playing a role in the situation? If you always say yes, sometimes people might think, oh, wow, she's really capable, or he's got all this time. And some people might not have, such a positive intention. They might take advantage of you and, give you more work because you never say no. And as Tracey just mentioned, that can be really detrimental to your wellness and to your health. And I see this all the time. If people put in like extra hours all the time without any consequence, without any boundaries, then the long-term effects, are really detrimental. You're going to burn out. You're going to create a whole bunch of imbalances in your mind and in your body, and you're going to end up feeling resentful. Your capacity to work at a high level is really not going to be conducive to producing and being effective if you are taking on more than what you actually can. And that's really the definition of stress. When you feel that life is throwing things at you that surpass your ability to cope with it. So all of the external stuff is bigger than your ability to cope with it, either mentally, time-wise, energetically. And so then you kind of freak out and you go into that overwhelm. So I know this is a short episode, so we'll probably wrap it up. I want you guys to think about, how can I be smarter with my time? How can I be genuine in the way that I communicate? And how can I stand strong? It's important to understand that people respect other people by saying, I would love to take that project on once I finish these responsibilities. I would love to catch up with you. However, I want to give you all of my attention. So this is the date that really works. Does that work with you? So there is a lot to admire in a person that can really take control of their own time and is genuine in the way that they give of themselves to you.
I love it. That's awesome. I really hope that answered the question for our very special listener who sent that in. And if you have any other questions you'd love to send through to us, you know where to contact us on our Instagram page. Just send us a message and we'll do our absolute best to make sure that we cover a segment for you with your question.
And thank you so much for sending the questions in. We absolutely love you all and hope to inspire you each and every single day. So be amazing.
Yay. Goodbye.
The information, views and opinions expressed on this podcast should not be used or treated as a substitute for nutritional, medical, psychological or other advice by a qualified health professional. Hosts and guests on the podcast express their own opinions, experiences and conclusions. Nothing in the podcast should be used to diagnose, treat, cure or prevent any medical condition. The podcast is not intended to replace any medical or mental health treatment. All information and advice provided is for general well-being and does not take individual cases into consideration. Neither Tracey Saltis, Kali Alfaro or any sponsor endorse the opinions, views or conclusions expressed or shared on the podcast. Tracey Saltis and Kali Alfaro take no responsibility for any symptoms or consequences as a direct or indirect result of the podcast.